Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Learning from the Journey. We're broadcasting from the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. My name is Natasha Walker Jones, and my husband is Pastor E.L. Jones Jr., a.k.a. Pastor J. We met in college in the 80s, but the Lord brought us together as husband and wife many years later. After pastoring for 8 years in a traditional church, my husband prayed for new direction, and the Lord opened up a door for more effectual ministry for us together.
Our ministry motto is worship through service, and our goal is to simply fulfill the combined commission of Matthew 24:14 and Matthew 25:31 through 40 to spread the gospel into all the world, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, give water to the thirsty, and visit the sick and those in prison. We support ministries in Atlanta, the state of Georgia, and around the world. We don't reinvent the wheel, we just push and help the wheel go further, faster. We are Midtown Ministry because in every town there is a middle of the town, and at the heart of the town is you. What's up? It's your man, Pastor J. I'm here on location with my man, my homie, my ace, my brother from another mother, Bryant Herbert, a.k.a. B-Her. What up, man?
Man, what's going on, man? You good?
Oh, man, I'm blessed. We're glad to have you here on Learning from the Journey.
Glad to be
We
here.
want to get to know you a little better. I've known you for over 13 years now.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it's just
long time, man.
Yeah, but we're glad to know you, glad to be a ministry partner with you, have worked with you in a variety of settings, and recently another setting that we'll talk about later in the interview. But we just want to learn from your journey. So if you could kind of kick it off with your foundations, your upbringing, what kind of got you to where you are?
Okay. Man, a little bit about me. I grew up Adventist, but my mom was Adventist and my dad was Baptist. So when I grew up, you could say my house was divided. There was always a battle on what we were going to do on the Sabbath. So as far back as I can remember, my dad got us into sports, playing t-ball on Saturday. And so during baseball season, my dad was like, y'all, we're going to baseball. We're going to play t-ball. And, and then when we got a little bit older out of t-ball and the games began to shift, then my mom started putting her foot down and says, no, y'all are not doing that. But growing up, it was always a battle between my mother and my father, just trying to see who was going to win out on the Sabbath.
Right.
And as I got older, if you have that decision and you see all of your friends playing on Friday nights, playing on Saturday, watching TV, and you have your mother who wants you to go to church, and then your father saying, hey, you don't have to, you can go do this. You're always going to lean upon your father and everything. So I can say throughout that time, as growing up, especially as a teen, I began to lean on my father and just like, I want to do this because my dad's going to allow me to do it. But that kind of built me and that allowed me to grow, but it also gave me a different perspective of growing up in the church, because I was always one that was very leery of people just trying to get me to do something out of fear. I've always had that love-hate growing up with the Adventist church. So, and I can say back then it was more of a hate because it was more forced upon me with my mother. And God, I love my mother. Let me just make that very clear. I love my mother. But, it was a lot of legalism that I grew up in and that was practiced and just had to get a lot of that stuff. And me and my mom have spoken since then. I love my mom. And she's apologized for how she raised me because she didn't know any better.
Right.
So that was her way of just saying, I'm learning this new, because she was a new Adventist right before she got married and, had us. So she was only going off what other people had taught her. Right. And when she did that, it kind of pushed me and my siblings, not necessarily saying, hey, we want to go all the way into the church.
Gotcha. All right, so you grew up in this kind of split household. So since you are now a pastor, in the Adventist church. How did you reconcile that battle between legalism and grace?
Man, it took a while. I'm not even going to lie, because we might get to it later in my book. I have a chapter. I open it up with the lost years. And within the lost years, I just talk about from my adolescence to my young adult, where I was just really seeking and just trying to figure out what was going on in my life. So I would say because of legalism, it forced me out of the church, because I did not want to be forced to do anything. But it wasn't until, and I can be very honest about this, when I got to the seminary, I started trying to understand what I believed. It wasn't something that was forced upon me. So when I went to the seminary, I made a conscious decision to resign from teaching down in Atlanta and move to Berrien Springs, Benton Harbor, and go into it, because I wanted to understand more about the denomination that I was a part of. I wanted to understand, what did I believe? So as through that process of going up there and meeting you and meeting a lot of other people, I began to understand the difference between legalism and grace. And I began to realize what legalism was, and that I had been practicing it my whole life.
Wow.
And that was the burden that was just breaking my back, because I could not have any freedom. I could not have any peace, because I was always trying to prove myself or to work myself into something that was already freely given to me. So with me, and I think that's a real problem that we have within the Adventist church. We don't understand the freedom that grace gives us.
Yeah.
And what I had to understand, that I've already been accepted. I didn't have to do anything, nothing,
right,
to be accepted by Christ, to be loved by God. There is nothing that I can do or have done that would change God's love towards me.
Now, I want to revisit this, because going to the seminary was a significant thing.
Yeah.
Trust me, I wasn't trying to go to seminary.
I wasn't either. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I hate to cut you off, because initially when I went, I did my degree in K-12 administration leadership.
Okay.
And I still didn't want to get it. And then I met my wife. We were, dating at the time, but I didn't want to go. And then I had a come to Jesus moment. And then God was like, you can't go. So I did youth ministry. So I don't actually have an MDiv. I have a master's in youth ministry, which I completed in a year and a half. So with 3 years that I was up there, I did a master's in educational administration and a master's in youth ministry. So, but it was more about understanding the relationship between me and God.
You mentioned it earlier, but tell us about the book and the journey that brought you to the point of wanting to write a book.
The book is called Moment of Clarity. And it's a self-help book. It's a book that is geared for those who are trying to understand their calling, their life, their purpose in their life, what is going on. Because I truly believe that God speaks to us in many manners. We just have to sit back and reflect and say, God, how are you speaking to me at this time? So what it does is pulling from personal experiences, and that I'm tying into my chapters, and just saying, hey, God, how are you speaking to me? Is you talking to me through my dreams? Are you talking to me through my dreams? Are you talking through someone else? What is the meaning of this? Did this happen by chance? Was this a coincidence? Why is this person in my life? Why did this experience take place? So it's a journal for you with questions, because I have an education background.
Right.
And you're able to journal after each chapter just to answer the questions, try to figure out your purpose and your calling, or why certain things happen to you in life, so that you can have that moment of clarity. So you asked about what motivated me. I actually wrote this book in 2011.
Oh, wow.
It took me 16 days to write it, a chapter a day.
Oh, wow.
And I sat on it for 7 years.
Wow.
Guess I had to be perfected, but but I sat on it for 7 years before God spoke to me and says, why are you sitting on this? And I went ahead and started finding some editors, went ahead and found out. I went through about 4 or 5 editors and none of them worked out. And I finally got somebody that I was okay with and just got it published and just went from there. But God was like, look, if I've given you 4 or 5 talents, why are you just sitting on one of them?
Okay.
So it was like the parable of the man with the talents. I didn't want to have him give me 4 talents and only use 1. Because I know God would be like, well, I gave you 4 or 5 talents to use. I've gifted you these things.
Right.
Why are you sitting on them? And he spoke that to me, and I said, all right, let me go ahead and do that, because within that, not only was there the book, there was also my music that I had been sitting on.
Right, exactly.
So I was like, well, let me go ahead and do both of these things, because I know God is going to hold me accountable for what he's given me that I have not done. And so that's where you have the book and also the album called Moment of Clarity that are just saying, this is my calling, this is my purpose. I'm not worried about what others are thinking or caring about it. It's not necessarily meant for those who might get offended for it. If you're offended from it, it may not be for you. But I'm trying to meet the masses how by any means necessary. My personal mantra is to spread the gospel by any means necessary.
Man, that's mine too, man. Where you biting on me?
No, it must be the ism, man. It must be
the ism.
Must be the ism.
Awesome. All right, so your book title, Moment of Clarity. You know, here in the United States, we're dealing with a lot of turmoil and things that are rising, bubbling to the top in the Black community, with society as a whole. Talk to us about how your book relates to the things that are going on in society that have been being addressed by Black Lives Matter and a lot of the societal push for change. How does that address it, particularly with young Black men?
Well, it's funny that you asked that. Being a Black male, we have to do a lot of reflection first. And the first thing, we have to understand who we are and whose we are. Right. And if we're understanding who we are and whose we are, that gives us the confidence to be comfortable in who he has called us to be. And within that, once you are identifying with your Savior, your Lord, and who your Master in Jesus Christ is, you're comfortable because you've already been accepted. So what anybody says about you is not going to be a problem. It's not a concern to you because you're already good with God. I'm good with God. Right. And if we can get our young Black males to understand that I'm good with God, they won't have to go out here and try and to build up a name or build up a reputation on the streets or do these things for acceptance or try to get people's attention. I work with a lot of young people. I've been mentoring since I was teaching. So that's almost been, I've been in the teaching 19 years now. Wow. So you could say I've been educating and mentoring for 19 years. And over those 19 years, I've always seen our young Black males scream out for love. Right. They're looking for love and acceptance. When they are initiated to the gangs show more love to our young Black males than the churches do. Right. And that's a problem. Because they will say, I love you, I'll die for you. And if you, as a teenager, you don't have a father in your home or your mother's working in and out, or you're raising your kids, and you have someone that's going to actually look in your eyes and say, I love you and I'll die for you. And you can't get that from someone in your church that's supposed to love you, that's supposed to pour into you. That means a whole lot to them. Or they say they grow up together. So when I understand this, if I can show that these kids are loved, I can plant the seed and hopefully someone else can water it. And that's part of what my book is saying, understanding that you have to do your part. You're just a piece of the puzzle. You're just a piece in the big grand scheme of things, but it's something that God is giving you that you can only do because you can only reach certain people. He has placed people in your life that you can reach. That you're the only one that he says, look, you have this skill set. You have these people in your life. You have this type of charisma that you can reach this audience. And he says, I'm giving this to you. Now go. That is the meaning of the gospel. Being with God, just being with him in his presence, understanding who you are, whose you are, understanding your purpose, your mission, and your calling. And you say, I have a willing heart to go. That's the Great Commission. to go. And when you are ready to go, nothing can stop you.
Right.
And the one thing that I understand about always being on go is that people fear what they cannot control.
Oh, amen.
So it's not just people, but it's also spirits. It's demons. It's the devil.
Mm-hmm.
He fears those what he cannot control.
Right.
And when we understand that we have God and he's got our back, we can always stay on go, and we can always live in our purpose. We can always be in our will, in his will. We can always be in his calling. And so everything that we do in our life is glorifying God.
Right.
So everything that we do, or everything that I'm trying to do right now, is to glorify God. So if I can understand that if I'm working with these young people, or whether I'm preaching, or whether I'm doing a book, or I'm doing some music, I'm saying that I'm glorifying God in everything that I can do.
Right.
And that's part of the gospel. And that's what I want to pass on to our youth. That's what I want to pass on to our young black males, females. I want them to understand that they're loved, that they're already accepted. I want them to understand that they need to know who they are. Because if they can live with that confidence at an early age,
right.
I'm 42. I'm getting this now. But if I can give everything that I have right now to them
right.
at the age of 15, 16, or 17, maybe some of the mistakes that I made, they won't have to make. They won't have to go down that path that I did, or make those choices.
Right.
And they can avoid them.
Man, that's why you're my brother, man. I have that same passion for youth ministry. Yeah. Pour and help them not make the same mistakes I made. Now, one thing you talked about was being able to go and do, whether it's the music or the preaching or whatever. But one thing I realize is a lot of people don't understand that concept. They think, well, if I'm doing ministry, it has to be I'm preaching, or I'm working at a church, or I'm an evangelist or something. But they don't understand that in all things we're to give God glory. So you can be a hairstylist, you can be a carpenter, everything whatever gift and talent God has given you, you can use it for his glory. And so I know that one of the gifts that he's given you is the music. And you talked about how you have the CD that goes with the book. Tell us about how you got into that music and why you do the style of music you do.
Man, the music, man, it actually started when I was in high school, because, everybody playing sports wanted to be a rapper. So my content was a lot different back then. And I always loved music. So me and my friend in high school named Jerome, we always did some music. And our first song that we did was From the Borough to the Ville. And so we were just talking about going to Tennessee State. And then it just picked up from there. We used to dibble and dabble, do freestyles in college. And then after college, one of my friends got into some music. His name was Marcus Anderson. And he was doing a lot of mixtapes at TSU. And he was like, Herb, why don't you come on, get on this? And so I got on to about 4 of them, and I was really liking it. But within that, he passed away. He got killed. And it kind of put everything on pause. And it made me look back at my music and say, what is my content? What am I actually saying in here? And is this something that I can glorify God with? Because even though it was my lost years, I knew I couldn't just really go out here and just talk about all of these things that I was rapping about. So I put a lot of stuff on pause until about 2013. And one of the students that I was mentoring, he started getting into music, and he was like, hey, Mr. Herbert, I want you to hear some of these beats, because he knew that I did music. So I was just like, okay, send it to me. So he shot them to me, and the first song that he sent me was Moment of Clarity off the album. And I wrote the song, hook, everything in about 15, 20 minutes. It just came to me. It was like everything just hit me all at the right time. It was a moment of clarity. It was a moment of clarity. And I was just able to reflect on how God has been through me. So from there, I knew that God had given me this passion to pick back up. And he gave me these songs, and he just gave me a whole bunch of songs, and I just started writing to them. But the problem is with that, it still took me another 4 years to really say, I'm going to go ahead and do this, because I was always worried about what someone was thinking. I was always wondering, what is someone going to say about in this church? But once I had that moment of clarity and realized that they don't have a hell or heaven to put me in, that God is my ultimate decider, that I'm in his hands, and if he placed it on my heart, it's not for anybody else to judge, it's just for me. And I said, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And since then, I've released 2 mixtapes, and I released the album. Mixtape 1 was Flipping the Script, where I just took a whole bunch of old school beats and began just to rap over them. Then I dropped Moment of Clarity when I dropped the book last year, right before COVID hit. And I dropped this summer another mixtape with one of my former students, actually.
Oh, okay.
One of my former students that I was teaching at in Atlanta. And that was called Spiritual Warfare. So for me, the music and just how it evolved with me was just making sure that I can glorify God in this. I want to be able to reach those who are never going to be able to come into the church.
All right, in your book, you have this interesting paragraph. It says, God speaks to us in various ways. He does not speak to us all the same way. God can use dreams, the word, through a pastor, parents, family, friends, co-workers, experiences, books, or even enemies. But it is all up to us to hear him or to receive his message. If I only knew then what I know now, I would have listened and prevented some pain. But I hadn't taken the time to know his voice. Man, that is so interesting, because like you said earlier, God can use us in wherever we are to do ministry, but also he has so many different ways of speaking to us. Talk a little bit about how you came to that revelation.
Whew, man. It was really started off with the dreams for me. As I say in the book, it started, my first time was having a moment of clarity with God, was when I got baptized at 15. I got baptized at 15, but as I spoke, it was about under fear. It was one of those fire and brimstones. You don't want to go to hell. And I was like, no, I don't want to go to hell. I mean, they was, being under legalism, and they were saying it's only going to be 144,000. I'm like, man, what the heck? I ain't never going to make, I got to do whatever I can. So let me get baptized. So I got baptized at 15 out of fear. It was that summer with 15 when I had my first moment of clarity. And I was in the shower. And while I was in this hot shower, I got chills. And what I thought at that moment, all I saw was, when I thought about death, all I saw was darkness. And it scared me, and it opened my eyes at that moment that I was doing something wrong. And that was the first time that I said, okay, God is speaking to me. That was the first time that I really acknowledged God in his presence. And from there, I began to have moments where God interceded, where if I was, as I said, in my lost years, drinking or driving, and God took the wheel for me. And I don't know how I got home. And during 1 year specifically, I had so many dreams. One dream was where I was had sleep paralysis, and I couldn't move, and there was an imp just sitting on me. And with this imp sitting on me, and being at an infancy age of my Christianity or my spirituality, I began to sing the only song that I knew, which was either Jesus Loves Me or one of my favorite songs, Jesus, 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 oh, what a wonderful child, wonderful. And I began to sing that, and I couldn't move, and this imp just turned his head all the way around and stuck his tongue out on me. But in that moment that I began to sing those songs, and I'm having this dream, I felt an angel come down, stick their hand in my forehead, and begin to just pull whatever spirit that was in me out of it. All right. Now here's the key on this dream. By the time it was pulling me down all the way to my feet, I had a sleigh bed. I kicked my feet out, and I woke up. That was that moment that I said I had to leave here, that I had to change my environment, that I had to do something different, that I had to try to truly understand what God wanted for me in my life. I truly wanted to know my purpose and my calling, because I really believe that if I had stayed in Atlanta at that time, I probably would have been dead by now. Not because I was just doing some whole bunch of scandalous and illegal stuff. It's just that I was not connected with God. So I knew I had to leave at that moment. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. It says that I had to go out of here. And that's why I say, whether through dreams, visions, people, experiences, they're all real. They all play into us understanding what God has truly designed for us to be in our life.
All right, so you've had this interesting journey. And so, of course, our show is called Learning from the Journey. So we want to know, what is it that you've learned from your journey?
Well, that's a loaded question. I could talk about that for a long time, but if I'm really just going to put it in here, I'm going to say 3 words: trust the process. And what I mean by trusting the process is that you have to trust God and everything that comes into your life and learn from it. You have to trust the people that God has placed in your life, and you have to just trust Him. There's a process that we're all going through. You want to call it sanctification, justification, so we can get to glorification. We're trying to make sure that we're getting to glorification. But with these processes, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be valleys. There's going to be mountains. There's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be a roller coaster. But within all of that, you have to trust the process. And it's just like saying, I got to have my seatbelt on. God is my seatbelt. He's there to protect me. We got to buckle up with Him every single day to saying that I know whatever I'm going to go through, this seatbelt is going to help save my life. God's got me, and I got to trust the process. So everything in life, whether it's young people, so with everything in life, you have to trust God. Young people, that you've gone through something, understand that God has placed those experiences in your life to connect you with someone else. And we can't forget where we came from. We can't forget our experiences, our past, because those are going to help someone else to get through some of their downtime, some of their rough moments, some of their low moments. Right. So trust the process along the journey, and just know that He's not done with us yet. And that's the one thing I love about God. I'm still not perfect, but I'm blessed, I'm covered, and I'm thankful for it. He's not done with me yet. So even though I'm still on my journey, I still got a ways to go.
That's what the shirt said, right?
Yeah, that's warning. The Lord is still working on me.
So He's not done with you yet.
Yeah, He's not working on gospelish too.
Cool. If you'd be interested in sharing your testimony about your journey, we invite you to contact us at midtownministryatl@gmail.com. We invite you to tune in again next week here on the Now Network.